My mum was funny. She was strict. She was honest. She was everything that you could need. There was 12 of us. My eldest brother was Avie, and my youngest sister was Teresa. And in between them, there was Timmy, Marilyn, Lillian, Peggy, Anne, Richard, Michael, Pat, Dennis, and of course myself.
Yeah.
I was the baby.
Oh,
Well, there was 3 babies actually. There was my brother, myself, and Teresa, because the rest of them were like in a big family. You're sort of categorized. You had the eldest, then you had the middles, and then you had. So we were always sort of the babies. We grew up in Boyce Street. That's where we were. That's where the home place really was, in Boyce Street. That's where my mum was born and reared in Boyce Street, because she came from Goulding, Mary Pauline. So like when we were growing up in Boyce Street, there was an awful lot of derelict houses there. And they used to be like, well, it wouldn't be me now, because it would be my brother. Pat would be the one that would, what they would do is, they said there's a load of puppies up in the house, but they'd be after taking away the floorboards. So they'd run up to see the puppies, and all of a sudden they go straight down. And I know they could have broke their neck, but it was fun. My dad died when I was 11. I didn't know much about him, but then when he died, there was death in the family that we never knew what that was. But he was a loving man. And what I do remember him of is he used to cook the dinner on the Sunday. He used to put all the plates out on top of the table. He used to put the salt on top of the plates so that we wouldn't be too much salt. No, I don't know. We're all salties, because I love salt. But he'd always, on the Saturday night, he'd always make the jelly. And he'd always have the jelly and custard, and he'd always have the tinned fruits for the pudding on the Sunday. He was the only man on the street that had a car. So me, Dennis and Teresa would be in the boot of the car, because it was an Anglo estate. So we'd be in the boot of this car. And then you had my other brothers and sisters in. And then my mother, of course, and Teresa was Pride and Praise, and sitting on my mum's lap. We'd head off down to York, Crosshaven or whatever, or then we might go off to my father's mother over in the south side. But we would never be able to go in there, because it'd be too much of us going in. Oh yeah, like my mother was, what could I say, she's strong. She's a very strong woman, but all she had to say was wait until your dad come home. And of course, like, that's an Irish thing anyway. And I was saying, like, the fear of your father coming in is, what's his name? But then my dad would come in and she'd say, Abby, he done this, that and the other. And my father would want to go to take off the belt, and then my mother then would go up and she'd sort of stand between you to stop you from being hit. But like, I couldn't understand how she could actually say it and then stop me from getting belted. Do you know what I mean? But she made sure that my father knew then. I've never seen an argument going on with my father. All I remember is Monday to Friday, my dad just come in from work, and my mum would have my dad's dinner ready. So then, but my mum and dad would sit down and they'd have their dinner together. And they'd talk about whatever, and they could be, like, to us at the time, it could be hours, but like it could have only been a half an hour, but it was their time together. And I didn't want to send it to my mum. I said, "Man, did you ever fight with my dad?" And she said, "No." She said, the one thing she said that my dad, myself and your father always said, she said that we never fight over your children, over the children. I saw how he died was he went into St. Finbarr's Hospital with his heart. He always suffered from his heart, and so he had a massive heart attack inside there. 9 o'clock in the morning, the man in the next bed said to my mother, he said, "Nan," he said, He said, I was laughing and joking with him. He said, and he said, he passed wind. He said, and he said, well, he said, the nurse came in and she said she blamed me. She said, your father, he said, Abby went into bed. He said, and he was breaking his heart laughing, pretending to be asleep. He said, and he said he never woke up. Like Abby then became Abby became very protective towards us then too. Abby looked after us then after my father died, and really and truly, because he used to be there, make the dinners, and he became my father really in one respect. I looked after the house because you couldn't go in case the house ran away. So he was an awful stable person in my life, really, Abby was. Abby had an accident when he was young, I think. Well, we were told that he had a tumour in the brain when he was young. Like, Abby could speak fluent Irish. I mean, no more than I did. Like, he couldn't go down to shop now with a list of, we say, seven things. He'd have to go down and come back again. He just couldn't retain things. But he was highly intelligent. But he was always grand, like he'd make it lovely dinner. And I think he was the one that taught me really and truly how to cook and all that kind of caper. So he was always there. When we came in from school, Abby was always there. The first ever holiday we ever went. There was me, Dennis, Teresa, the three youngest ones again. Then there was my mum, my Auntie Peg, and there was Abby. We went up to Butlins. So before we went up there, my mother got a jotter for me, Dennis and Teresa, because we were going over to school on the Thursday. So she turned around and she gave us the jotter and the pencil, and she said, I want you to write down every town and every bus name that you passed through going up there. We were supposed to be going on holidays. And she was giving us an educational class. But we spent the whole time in Butlins. It was one of the best weekends that ever had. Myself, Dennis and Teresa, we were dressed in the same outfits, like the tops, like in jeans. Teresa had a white top with all military kind of badges on it, and Dennis had like a wine one and I had a navy one. But on Dennis's one, there was an English badge on it, the Union Jack flag on it. So my mum said, she said, Jesus Christ, she said, we can't do that, she said, we'll be shot. So she had to go in and cut that badge or everything, and she had to doff off my brothers. So it was one of the best holidays that we ever had. You see, it was Teresa, my mum, and my Auntie Peg in one chalet. There was me, Dennis, and Abby in the other chalet. So at night time, Abby would have to go to bed early because he'd take his tablets. Once Abby has his tablets, he has to go to bed. So Abby took his tablets. Myself and Dennis waited until we had, and all of a sudden we were out the door. We knew that my mother, because we sort of knew where she went. So when we saw my mum, we said we knew that Teresa was on her own. So we'd go way up and we might bring up the fresh donuts. And there would be a hot donut straight out of the thing that we never tasted before, no. And we'd bring them up to Teresa, and because she'd have to stay there, because she'd have the key, because she couldn't go in case that my mum came back. Whereas we were out half the night. Well, she thought that we were inside in bed. And if she thought that we were out, we'd have been on the next bus home. Oh, we were able to swim. We were great swimmers. We were always able to swim. Well, then there was this big high board that you'd actually, like, we were young and we thought that you could dive off the board, but we didn't realise once you hit the water, you can hit it with it's not smack. But of course, my brother Dennis, he was quite tubby. I was like a pull through for a rifle, but Dennis was quite tubby. But when he landed on his belly, I don't think he ever dived off a board again after that. He got such a slap. And of course, I'd always laugh. when I met Terry, it was, we sort of, what we're going to do. So my sister was over in England, Teresa, and she had a little girl, Audrey. So I said I will go off to England. So Terry packed up everything and off to England we went. I was going over by boat because I was going to get my independence, and I was going over by boat. My aunt said, look, because she didn't think I was going staying. She thought that I was only just gone over, and I said, no, I'm going over to stay. And so she bought me a return. I think she actually bought a return ticket for me to go back. But she didn't want me to stay over there, truthfully. But when I went over there, it was just freedom. It was just, I could do what I like. I was away from, I was after cutting the apron strings, and I was able to be me. And we had laughs, like myself and Teresa, because we were very, very close. We were always close, we still are close. But she needed me, so I was her rock and she was my rock, really and truly. So we used to have some times there, like, oh, genius. Like when Teresa, one time when Teresa, she was living in her mother-in-law's flat, really and truly. It was a 4-bedroom flat. So Teresa hated the thoughts of if she put something into the fridge, it could be gone. So she decided she'd buy her own fridge. So she went down and she bought this fridge off this woman's second-hand fridge. So when we opened the fridge, it was reeking. Oh my God. So we had to carry it. But every time we moved, the thing was stinking, like. You know, I've never seen anyone love an item so much. It was her first item that she ever owned. She polished it, she cleaned it, she got this contact thing put over, and she even got a lock. That was her own personally. She'll kill me now if she is. That was her personal thing. So we spent years then. They're always, like when our kids were small, Audrey. Like when she's be going to work, I used to be collecting her, and like they became more my children than what's the name, like. And I know one of my other nieces think that I have favourites. I don't really, I've never had favourites, but Audrey does have a place because, and Timothy, because they were the only two that was there. And then of course then Rachel and Shirley, then they came over afterwards when they were a bit older. But like England was very good to me. And I'd go back in the morning if I could, but unfortunately I'm after packing up everything now and moving down.
Come.
Well, when I come home from, like, when I come home from England, you get the board. I get the board because I couldn't afford to be flying, because in them times, like, it was €300 to be flying. You'd get the coach from Victoria, and then you get to Victoria to Wales, and from then you get the boat back on, and then you get it all the way into Cork. So you're travelling. It was like going to Australia, really and truly. You'd be knackered by the time. It'd take 24 hours to get home. And now when you realise it, like, should it takes that on the flight? And I've often wondered, like, oh, could I fly 24 hours? But yet I was on the bus and the boat for the same length of time. Like, the minute you go home, then it was great. Because, like, it was great. Like, my mum would be there, and, like, there'd be always a big dinner there. And she'd make sure, like, that's, like, might be the baddest, you know, because the baddest are a big ham. So that, like, I know ham now sounds very passionate, and it wouldn't be it wouldn't be the big, and it wouldn't be the gammon, it would be the proper ham. Because my mother had a great thing for the best. Like, my mother wouldn't get a small bit of beef like that, she'd get the silver side beef. You know? Then, at them days, then, like we said, there would be only me, Dennis, Abby, and my mum would be there. And Dennis used to be out working in the mornings, and then... But then my mum would get out, and by the time he's gone down to get the thing, she would have the tea and the thing, and then she'd say to Dennis, go up and see if he's coming down at 5 o'clock. I might never went to bed now at 1 o'clock in the morning. Go up and see if he's coming down. So there's what company said, Johnny said, me today come down. I'd come down, and then the laughter would stop, and then we'd have a great laugh. And then Dennis would be going to work at 7 o'clock. And then she turned around and she said, I'm going in for a little sleep now. She said, are you going back up? Well, I'll be wide awake. And then she said, listen, she said, if you're not doing that, she said, look, there's a thing out there that you can do. And I'd end up then sort of, I might change all the curtains, I might change and do all the garden, I might go and even do the garden. Or I might do, anything, but I'd be up all morning and then she'd come out. And then she'd come out, because then my mum had home help. Rita Muffrey was her home help. And Rita would be coming in. So, but not alone that, but my mum would get up at that time of the morning to clean the house, to make sure that it would be alright for the home help when she comes in. So then the two of them could sit down and they'd be talking about all the cock. And then she might say to her home help, look, Reese, you can go on holidays now because he's there. But then before they'd even go back, she'd say like, when are you coming again? And I said, Jesus, man, I'm still here. She said, yeah, but she said, are you going to make, like, I've never been anywhere else. I've never went to France, I've never went to, because the minute I got holidays from work, she said, when are you coming? She always was into the garden, but like, as you said, talking about the shed, the Varna. Oh, Jesus. She wanted a Varna, so she said she wanted to put it there. No, there was a big slope of earth, and I'm talking about, oh my God, I don't know how many buckets of earth that we had to dig out of there to put the Varna down, and to have it levelled. So, myself and Abby were out there from, I'd say about 9 o'clock. And from 9 o'clock until it was finished, we would dig in out this plant for her shed, for her Varna. And there she was made giving instructions, oh, put it down there. And we'd have to dump the earth that was there down the very back. But she was made giving instructions then, she said, and of course, Abby would be wanting a cup of tea. But like, he'd be getting very frustrated. We'd say, come on, what time is it? What time is it? Like, come on, we have to go in for our cup of tea. Come on, what time is it? And he said, another 5 minutes. Oh, we were out there all day without nothing to eat. She wanted to get the shed done. Anyway, we had it all done. It was all shaped and everything was all done. And Terry was home at the time. So when she said, Terry, what you think of that? No. So Terry said no. And then he said, he'll have to go back a small bit more. He said, because... of course, to look at, see Abby's looking at Terry to say, will you ever go on and boil your head? Like he wants to get in. So we had to cut back down more. That shed came into my mother's house. And it was like a new house. She was able to walk in. She just get the brush it out and all. It was like she put carpet in it and everything. Oh, and then she used to, like, things in that she needed, she used to be putting in there, and she was being in with hooks, and she had, before you know, she had the whole thing full. Because she always wanted to know, like, if I died in the morning, she said, I'd love to know, like, what was in. So she said she organised 3 weeks. But, like, she thought she was going to die at one stage. And what she done was she got all the family together, because she says I could be dead in the morning. She said that, so she gave away all her stuff to whoever wanted it. But then she had a party. But then 5 years down the line, she discovered she wasn't dead yet. So then she had to have another week. So then she had to have another party. So she's the only woman that had 3 weeks. And my brother and my kid, there was the insurance man came around, like for the thing. So he turned around and he said, like, my brother, Michael is very funny. So he turned around and he said, listen, he said, like, to insure someone now, he said, like, what do we have to do? He said, like, well, he said, you just insure them. It's only a penny eight in insurances things. He said, you insure them. And he said, if they die. So he said, like, who's the best bet to insure would be my mother. Because it was either between his mother-in-law or my mother. But my mother was years older than his mother-in-law. And of course, my mother lived up until she was 89. Poor old Mrs. Aaron died. He said, and he always told me, he said, Jesus, what a bad investment he made. He could have made a lot more money if he had invested in Mrs. Aaron. And that's true. You have kids now and they're backing answering my mother. Even her grandchildren wouldn't do that. They would be afraid of their life. But she was a matriarch. She was, like, her word was law. And, like, it could be wrong. But she was right. Like, she was very protective. Like, even with Abby, she protected Abby all through her life. She, like, from the day he was born to the day, I suppose. Because when she died, I had to say to her, look, man, go, like. I said, I look after him. I said, don't be worried about Abby at all, I look after him. Once she knew that he was okay. And then I looked after him then for 10 years, and I wasn't okay. What's only saying that, no joke. He was good, really. He missed her. He missed her dearly. Like, every morning he used to wake up, he used to ask, where was she? And then I'd start, I said, Abby, she's gone, she's dead, like. And then he'd start crying, so, like, he'd have to relive all that over again, so it was hard on him. Everyone do think I'm very like her, in looks, I suppose, and I suppose in humour. And I suppose, as Terry would always say, like, spindrift. I'd spinned and spinned and... But, like, she gave me her humour and she gave me... And I don't worry about nothing. I'd leave that to other people. Just always laugh. And if something is good, just laugh it off. I don't need anything. Like, she's in there. Like, I know she's where she is, and that's in there. And that's what I carry her always, like, in there.